We have 11 amazing restaurants featuring a wide variety for every price range and appetite. South Point's Garden Buffet has something for everyone at unbeatable prices. Or, if hunger strikes in the middle of the night, join us at Coronado Cafe. The American menu offers breakfast, lunch, or dinner 24 hours a day, plus a Chinese kitchen for authentic Chinese dishes from 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. From steak and eggs to wonton soup, it's fast and friendly service 24/7. When you need a quick pick-me-up, you can find it at our state-of-the-art Starbucks just inside the main South Point entrance. Order ahead with the Starbucks app for easy mobile order pickups. Or enjoy your favorites in the relaxing dining area anytime, day or night. If you love Mexican food, Baja Miguel's has all of your south-of-the-border favorites. There are dozens of classics to choose from, like fajitas, ceviche, chimichangas, tacos, and more. And for spirit lovers, Baja's colorful non-smoking tequila bar is right outside. Or maybe you're in the mood for seafood. Big Sur Oyster Bar has fresh seafood prepared right before your eyes. Savor freshly shucked oysters, crab legs jambalaya, shrimp and lobster. Beers on tap and a selection of fine wines are perfect to pair with your seafood favorite. Whether lunch or dinner, you'll love this fun atmosphere, located just off the casino floor. Ready to shake things up? Step back in time and treat yourself to one of the oldest restaurant chains in the country. Steak and Shake, famous for original mouth-watering steak burgers and hand-dipped milkshakes in a variety of flavors. For some old-fashioned fun, try Steak and Shake.
Welcome in. Good afternoon, everyone. December the 16th, 2024. We're in the home stretch of the calendar year and the football season. I'm Jeff Parles, alongside for about the first 15 minutes or so here today, our good friend Chris Andrews, Sportsbook Director. Chris, it was a very interesting weekend across the board. We'll get to that in a little bit.
Okay.
I want to start with these two games tonight because I didn't realize we actually have a real staggering of the games tonight. Usually when they've staggered these games, it's been 15 minutes. No, we got a full half hour. Yeah. They actually almost staggered it that the Minnesota-Chicago game will be done with the first quarter by the time that the second game starts.
Yeah, I like the timing of it. I like this better, yeah.
It's much better than the 5:15, 5:30 or 5:15 stuff they've been doing recently. But let's start with the first game. Really the biggest thing that's actually come down on this game in the last day, out of left field, Chicago's left tackle, Braxton Jones, is out because he started showing concussion symptoms late on Saturday night.
Oh, really?
So I
didn't even know that.
You know what? We'll credit someone we like. I was listening to ESPN radio locally here today. Mm-hmm. Chris Carlin, Joe Fortenbaugh were on. Oh. And Fortenbaugh was talking about this game, and Fortenbaugh mentioned that roughly 9 times in part of why he was making the bets he was making in the game tonight, because the Bears have been without their left tackle twice. It was 2 games they didn't score a touchdown. The Arizona game and the New England game. So that's
bad. I need the Bears outright.
Well, you're the only 6.5 in the market right now. You just moved back to it recently.
I just moved back to it. I mean, we had so much money going. Well, I'm telling you what I need right now. What time is it?
3:02.
3 o'clock. Okay, I got 2 hours, and I got about 2 hours. So it might change, but I took a ton of money +7 because I needed it. I took a ton of money on the money line because I needed it. So right now, I am at 6.5. I mean, they finally crumbled me at 7. They took so much +7 flat because we were the only 7 flat in the market. As everybody knows, that's all we do things here at South Point. So they finally got me, and I went to 6.5. I just had to. I took so much. I'll share with you off air how much I took.
Oh, okay. I'm good with that.
Not right now. But they finally made me go. But I got a lot of stuff pending, going to teasers and money line parlays to Minnesota tonight too.
Well, I can tell you breaking news on our show right now for Friday. We will have Chris Felica on Friday.
Oh, really?
So that's
great.
good. So
okay.
Throwing that out there for looking forward to Friday afternoon.
That should be fantastic.
So that'll be great. But I'll just tell you this with this game. We've been, you, me and Vinny have talked about this on Friday with Minnesota. We've been looking to go against the Vikings. Now, last few weeks, mixed in there was that ridiculous matchup the first time with the Bears where that was a toggler that landed on the exact number you guys didn't need,
of course,
in that game. It feels like it's happened more often than usual in the NFL
We've had
this year.
a lot of it
We've
this
had
year.
a lot of it this year.
But here's the thing. When you get orders from Michael Gunn and Frank Totti that that's the way you want to do it, then the pressure's off me.
Right.
I don't have to worry about moving three. This is what they want to do.
So
and by the way, when all those years at Cal Neva, I did things the exact same way. So it's not like I'm disputing them or anything like that. I mean, listen, when they land, it hurts. I could show you some numbers that would not just curl your hair, would even curl my hair.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, so they're bad. But again, what can you say? This is their orders. And by the way, if you're anywhere near this joint in the last couple of weeks, those guys make a lot of good decisions.
I was going to say, you're not struggling for business, especially the last few weeks.
Well, that's part of their mantra. They want to make it, an easy place, easy access, easy betting, easy everything for whoever wants, locals or whoever wants to come in here.
Yeah, or the Cowboys that were in town the last 2 weeks. I will say, a lot easier to get a parking spot today.
A lot easier today, yeah.
It's been the last 2 weeks. But going back to Minnesota, so you had that game. Then you had the ridiculous Jacksonville game where they didn't score a touchdown and they still won but didn't cover.
Right.
Then you had the Tennessee game, which was almost as equally ridiculous as the Jacksonville game where the Titans just kept basically punching themselves in the face and Minnesota covered. Then you had the Arizona game 2 weeks ago. Cardinals blew that game. Should have won that game outright.
I can't remember that.
Cardinals were up double digits in the second half. Minnesota ended up winning winning but not covering. So wasn't a terrible result, I think, for you guys. And then last week, Atlanta has the game tied in the fourth quarter and loses by 3 touchdowns.
Yeah.
So, but
now the money's all on Atlanta.
We'll get to them in a second. Yeah. But the funny thing is, with Minnesota, you look up this is like, we're trying to fade this team. If they win tonight,
they're tied.
They're tied with Detroit.
I know.
Forget the division, just the division. They're tied for Detroit for the number 1 seed.
Yeah.
Because if either of those teams win out, it doesn't matter what Philadelphia does. The NFC North champion, if they're 15-2, gets the 1 seed based off of how the tiebreakers break at this point.
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah. And so Minnesota, by the way, they have next week, they might be playing Sam Howell after what we saw with Geno last night. We don't know the extent of Geno's injury yet.
Yeah, and I didn't put that number up, by the way.
And then, you can't blame me on that. After watching Howell, that might be a much bigger difference than we would have had 2 days ago.
I ain't afraid, I can tell you that.
Well, there's no one that gets intercepted more and sacked more than Sam Howell.
Wow.
And then Minnesota ends with Green Bay and Detroit. So...
Yeah.
It's all there for the taking for this Viking team. Could you imagine 15-2 Sam Darnold-led Minnesota Vikings? That would be give Kevin O'Connell the trophy right now for Coach of the Year if that's the case.
Great job. But let me just I'm projecting way ahead.
Yeah.
Let's say Minnesota wins the Super Bowl. Certainly not out of the realm of possibility.
And they're alive at this point, absolutely.
What do you do at quarterback?
Well, I would also say I would imagine Minnesota winning the Super Bowl would be a great result for you guys, right? Because I'd imagine
so far.
People haven't probably bet them. What do you do at quarterback? I have no idea.
Yeah, okay.
I have no idea. I guess in that scenario, you just overpay Darnold for 3 years and then let McCarthy sit behind him, I guess. I don't know.
Now, everybody's projecting Darnold to be somebody else's quarterback next year. And I think that's a reasonable assumption. But, what do I have Minnesota to win the Super Bowl? About 20-1, something like that? That's not out of the realm of possibility.
They're alive. They are very much alive at this point. The other game tonight, Chris, Atlanta and Vegas. And we know the Raiders are a disaster. We know that. More likely than not, O'Connell hasn't been ruled officially out yet, but let's read the tea leaves. It's going to be Desmond Ridder more likely than not. If it is Desmond Ridder, it's Desmond Ridder against his former team, the Atlanta Falcons here, who are I would say slumping, but I feel like that's an insult to the word slumping at this point. I
know you hold a grudge against them after last year.
Oh, I hold a grudge against them for what they did to me last week too, Chris. But that's a different story for a different time. I don't know. I mean, since they beat the Cowboys on November 3rd, they're 0-4. They have lost to New Orleans. They lost to New Orleans by 3. They lost to the Chargers by 4 in a game the Chargers didn't score an offensive touchdown. And then the other 2 losses, they've lost by a combined, doing quick math, 53 points in those other 2 games to Minnesota and Denver. Look, Kirk Cousins hasn't thrown a touchdown pass in those 4 games
and all
either.
The money's on them tonight.
But you said all the money's on Atlanta. It's up to 6 in this game. No Max Crosby for the rest of the year also for the Raiders.
So funny. Just before as I'm walking over here, two different guys in line, I'm assuming betting the Raiders. One guy had a Crosby shirt on. One guy had a Jacobs shirt on. Boy, your bet would look a lot better if you had those 2 guys.
Well, Josh Jacobs last night, that first opening drive of the game was one of the most dominant running back drives I can remember to open that game. Really, that. I don't like saying games are over that quickly. Yeah. That one felt over very quickly last night in Seattle.
Seattle.
Yeah. You were dead early, Chris. But all of it's on Atlanta here tonight.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well,
I think it's more anti-Raiders.
I get it. Atlanta. I get it. But we're almost laying a touchdown now on the road with this team. Oh boy.
I don't have the Raiders my lowest rated team.
Who's last now?
Giants.
Okay, that makes sense after that yesterday. Again.
Yeah. Giants are the worst. I'm just trying to look. It might be second worst. I'd have to look a little more closely.
So Chris, let's not look at the worst. Let's start with the team with the best record in the NFL real quick because we've talked about it all year. Chiefs, by the way, finally cover a game.
Mm-hmm.
They took
them too.
Took a lot of things to happen in order to cover the game. They only needed a +5 turnover differential in the game, but. That's not the biggest news here. The biggest news is that Patrick Mahomes has a high ankle sprain.
Right.
Left the game early. Now, granted, Cleveland might have played 8 quarters and not scored more than 14 points in that game at this rate, with how that went. But that was the beginning of 3 games in 11 days for Kansas City. Mm-hmm. And with Buffalo beating Detroit yesterday, the 1 seed's not wrapped yet.
Oh gosh.
Kansas City still needs to avoid Buffalo beating them by 2 games down the stretch in order to hold on to the 1 seed. Now, they play Houston on Saturday in that first game of the doubleheader before the 4 teams that play on Saturday play again on Christmas against different opponents. You guys and everyone and the market are assuming that we are not going to see Patrick Mahomes based off this number. You guys opened 3.
I did open 3.
And they bet it down, and now it clicked back to 2.5 on Houston. Just a very fascinating dynamic with Kansas City playing this condensed schedule against 2 division leaders, by the way, at the moment.
But by the way, they're all playing that same schedule. Everybody involved.
Those 4 teams are playing the same schedule. It's just kind of funny that you ended up with teams that more likely than not are going to end up either end up as a top 5 team in the in the AFC, just depending on the order at this point.
Right, yeah.
But boy, what a quick turnaround for KC that they have to deal with now with their leader again, based off these betting numbers, assuming he's not going to be there on Saturday.
I made 2 different numbers for the game. I made the Texans 3 with no Mahomes, and I made the Chiefs 4 with Mahomes, so a 7-point swing, which I think is appropriate. I mean, you have Carson Wentz, and I know he's easy to knock, and he should be. I mean, he's nowhere near the player he was a couple years ago, and he really had the inside track to being the MVP before he got hurt. But I think 7 points is probably legit.
Okay.
But right now, like I said, our first bet was +3 from a wise guy. I'm not going to mention who the guy is, but a guy we know well. But then, so I moved at a point. I says, you got to move at a point. Who knows what the hell's happening here? But another sharp guy came in and laid the 2 right behind him, So I'm not sure what's happened. My anticipation is they won't play Mahomes this game. And, at home, I think knowing Andy Reid, I think that he would think he has a reasonable chance of winning this game without Mahomes. Now, the next they go to the Steelers. Or do they host this? I think
No, they go to Pittsburgh.
They go to Pittsburgh. Now, they probably need Mahomes for that game.
Yeah, I would say so. Even with, again, it felt like Pittsburgh got outclassed yesterday by Philly, but
no
it feels
question
like
about it.
feels like Philly and Buffalo might be in their own little category at the moment with all those defensive injuries on the Lions side.
Yeah.
Which actually, let's just go there to that game that you could have points betted the total in that game and won a bunch when that was
like
still
you
a
and
thing.
Frankie did.
Hey, look, credit to Frank, who is all of a sudden red hot. He's red hot.
Right, a lot of overs hitting.
Yeah, but that was the game kind of played out how I thought it would. It was whoever got more stops would end up winning the game. Buffalo got more stops. And really the biggest takeaway for me more than anything at this point, first off on the Lions, there's only so many injuries you can take at this point. Now, David Montgomery is out for the year now. Yeah. You're battered on defense even further than you already were. You're already down 7 starters. Now you're down 9 starters.
Just
after McNeil tears his ACL yesterday and Carlton Davis breaks his jaw. It just look, that offense is still high end even without Montgomery. But when you're playing elite teams week in and week out, when the playoffs come around, I don't know how the Lions can possibly win, even if they get the 1 seed. If they have to win 2 games against, let's say they have to go back-to-back Green Bay, Philadelphia, back-to-back.
Or Minnesota.
Or hell, at this point, Tampa and the Rams, who are both playing great
Tampa
football.
Can put some numbers up.
Tampa, that second half, they just eviscerated a good Charger defense. That was a beatdowns in the second half. I just don't know how Detroit can sustain when you're down to your 4th and 5th guys at multiple levels of your defense.
Well, 2 points I want to make. The first is if you go down through history, and it's a little hard and subjective at this point, but if you look at a lot of teams that have won Super Bowls, let's say in the last 20 years, and a lot of those were the Patriots, were they the best team all year? No. But they were healthy when it counted, and they were peaking when it counted. But a lot of times, health and luck kind of go together in the playoffs. The second thing I would say, I really believe when you get to the playoffs, and certainly to the Super Bowl, and probably even before that, I think a great defense will trump a great offense. And that's my big worry with Buffalo, because they do not have a great defense.
I agree with you, Chris.
Sure. But they do have a great offense. And, could they win? Yeah, hell yeah, absolutely. And I said it on Frank's show this morning. If you look at just my pure power ratings, I got Buffalo ahead of Philadelphia.
Okay.
If they were going to meet, though, I think I'd rather have Philadelphia. Now, it depends on the number, of course.
Yeah.
But I think I'd rather have Philadelphia.
It's so interesting with the looking at the AFC, and I agree with you 100% on Buffalo. And there's also one other factor. I need them to beat Kansas City in a playoff game first before saying, hey, this team's going to make that might be the game to reach the Super Bowl.
Right.
But they haven't beaten Kansas City in a big game. They're 0 for 3.
And again, can you blame the offense the year Josh Allen gave him a point?
No,
gave him a lead with 13 seconds left.
The 13-second game is still going to go. It goes down in infamy because the way that season ended up going, Buffalo probably wins the Super Bowl if they hold on there because they probably beat Cincinnati that next week, and they would have been, even though it was a Ram home game, they would have been favored against the Rams in the Super Bowl for sure.
No doubt about it.
Especially with the way, as well as Allen is playing right now, he's on his way to winning his first MVP. The stretch Allen was on at the end of that season is still the best Allen has ever played.
Yeah,
the week before against New England, he threw 6 touchdown passes in that playoff game. But I'm with you. But that's the thing in the AFC, though. Again, I think we know the field unless the Chargers really collapse at this point. All 7 of those teams, Chargers, Broncos, Ravens, Steelers, Texans, Chiefs, and Bills, all of them have major flaws this year.
Everyone.
Which makes this feel like, hey, look, for me, other than Denver at this point, I don't see Bo Nix winning 3 road games and getting to a Super Bowl.
Well, I hope you're right because I have this big of an exposure on Denver. Another one I'll tell you after the show.
Other than Denver, I can see even with the Chargers starting to come back to earth a little bit, I could see an argument for every single team in the AFC.
Chargers would be tough.
Yeah, it would take a lot, but make for a great playoff on the AFC side. So, and then the NFC side, we mentioned Philly already. That was. It was impressive. I learned a lot about both teams, actually, in that game. Pittsburgh, even though they lost the game and clearly were not on the level of Philly, they still have an absurdly high level of mental toughness. Because that game could have been over midway through the second quarter. And that was a game late into the third quarter. Until Najee fumbled the pitch, that was a game. I mean, Pittsburgh was driving to tie that game.
My one friend told me that it was the first fumble of Najee's career without being hit, just fumbling the ball.
It was a fluky little play.
All the way back to Alabama.
But it was, look, they're very tough. Now we have to monitor what's wrong with TJ Watt.
He's expected to play this week.
I think he'll be fine, like you just said. And I have a little bit concerned about Russell Wilson against high-end defenses, but that was going to come at some point anyway. But Philly, I mean, if this defense continues to play the way they're playing, we know even though Hurts broke his finger yesterday on his throwing hand, didn't seem to impact them too much. But if this defense keeps playing like they're playing, it's very difficult to see unless if Sirianni does something totally bamboozling.
Yeah,
it's very hard to see this team getting beat unless if it is on the road in an NFC title game against the NFC North champion, or if Buffalo's offense puts 40 on them. To me, I know your power rankings have Buffalo. They're the team to beat for me at the current moment.
No, I would, like I said, I have Buffalo rated ahead of them, but I think in a pick-em game for a Super Bowl, I think I'll take Philadelphia.
Yeah. Playing absurdly well right now.
Yeah, they are. And, listen, when you play that kind of defense and then you could run the ball the way they do, could they hold on to a lead? Now, against Josh Allen, might not be so easy.
Right.
But, that's probably the best formula for holding on to a lead against Josh Allen.
It's impressive. It was impressive what they did yesterday.
Yeah,
and look, yesterday's day as a whole, honestly, that early slate was really bizarre.
Terrible.
Was bizarre, to say the very least. At least Miami Houston didn't land Houston 3, Chris. At least you avoided that. It looked like you might have had a problem there for a little, but
and by the way, I think Miami's really been exposed. They're just not very good.
Look, I think at this point, this may seem harsh, but I think Mike McDaniel is Adam Gase with good PR.
I think I would say the same thing. I think on your show we mentioned how he's never beaten, or his record against good teams is just abysmal.
Hold on a second. I had
terrible.
I had something good here from Evan Abrams of Action Network, who's great with these stats. Mike McDaniel is now 1-12 straight up in road or neutral games against teams that are above 500.
That's not good.
1-12, and you know who the one win is against?
No.
Mike McCarthy and the Dallas Cowboys last year. So there you go. Yeah. Exactly. It all checks out, to say the very least. And that was a good win for Houston, who, again, did its best to make things interesting, but Derek Stingley made 2 gigantic plays in order to win that game. All right. Before I let you go, because I just want to ask you, because, of course, we'll be back on Friday. Everything on the college football playoff. By the way, Chris Felica will be leading the show at 2:00.
Great.
On Friday afternoon.
Can't wait.
What's the action look like over the weekend? Are people starting to just plop part like this will be the beginning of hey, I'm gonna have my Atlanta, Minnesota, Penn State, Notre Dame money line parlays flying in here, Chris?
Did you have to remind everybody to do that?
That was more of a note for myself, more so than anything.
I took it just before I came on here. I just went to 7 with Notre Dame. We took a big whack on Indiana. We talk about there's vulnerabilities for every AFC team. Probably say similar to a lot of the NFC teams.
Sure.
But by the way, we say the same thing about college. I did an interview with David Purdom the other day, and he was talking to me about Ryan Day is his job in jeopardy. I said, it probably is, but think about the narrative on Ryan Day, and couldn't you say that pretty much about almost all the coaches in this playoff? Now, some of these guys, like the guy, not Signetti, because he's had a great record, but I don't think he has the horses to do it this year. But Freeman, he lost as a 30-point favorite. Kirby Smart, he's won a couple of big games this year, but he could never beat Nick Saban. Sarkisian lost twice to Kirby Smart. Franklin, he has a terrible record against good teams. But again, you could say that about a lot of these coaches that are in these games. There's knocks that you could have on almost every one of them.
Well,
some of them are untested. I don't even know the guy's name from SMU. You know.
Oh,
me.
Red Lashley.
I'm terrible with names.
I mean, it was the first real big thing
That's
for
the
Lashley.
first real test.
I mean, look. I mean, if you're looking at this, the only two guys in the field who've won a national championship are Kirby Smart and Dabo Sweeney.
And Dabo.
And Dabo is clearly the worst team in the field.
Yeah, he's been knocked relentlessly the last couple years. So all these guys have flaws. So, I mean, right now, I think it is a very open tournament. And I'm really, really looking forward to it. I think this should be a great tournament.
All I will say is, and Ryan and I will have our official predictions on Thursday. The biggest result of this whole tournament actually comes in the horseshoe on Saturday night. Because if Tennessee pulls that upset, I think Oregon's path to the national championship really gets easier.
Yeah.
Because I don't see any chance of Tennessee beating Oregon in the Rose Bowl. I just don't see it. Now, Ohio State, Oregon, we already saw that game.
Yeah.
And Oregon only beat them by 1 in Eugene.
Yeah.
Game on if we get that in the Rose Bowl, which is what, again, if chalk prevails this weekend, which one of these home teams is losing. It's just a matter of which one.
I think so.
But we'll see how it all plays out. It's exciting. It's really exciting, Chris. Yeah. I mean, we've been talking about this for years and years and years, and we finally get it.
I can't believe I'm 68 years old and they finally do it. I've been saying it since I was 15, I think. Incredible.
All right, Chris, thanks as always.
Okay. Right.
Drew Dog, let's take a 1-minute break. When we get back, my plays for the 2 NFL games tonight, and some guy named Vinny is going to wander in the studio as well in about 15 minutes when we get back. Sports by the Book Football Frenzy.
South Point Casino has plenty of attractions for the whole family. Catch a movie. Our 16-screen movie theater includes 2 XD Extreme screens for the ultimate in viewing, sound, and luxury. After the show, treat the family to a variety of treats at our old-fashioned ice cream parlor, Kate's Corner. We scoop up a variety of creamy concoctions, including smoothies, hand-dipped cones, milkshakes, malts, sodas, and sundaes. At Kate's, there's something for everyone. And if you still got time to spare, our bowling center might be right up your alley. Voted Best of Las Vegas, it's a great place for friends and family fun. 64 lanes, a pro shop, snack bar, and arcade. And while the kids are bowling, you can play slots and sip on a drink in the Alley Cat Lounge while overlooking the lanes. For our more serious and professional bowlers, the South Point is also home to a separate tournament bowling plaza.
Welcome back in. It's Football Frenzy on Sports by the Book. Happy to be with you. I'm Jeff Parles. We're thrilled to have you there. If you're watching us, join our friend Vince in the chat. Join him. He's lonely in there. Say hello to Vince. We got 2 games here today. Right now, poll number 1. Who's the victor in the North? 83% of you say Minnesota. And then the poll that's going to be going in a few minutes, who's going to be the victor on the Boulevard today? Yeah, just off Las Vegas Boulevard with the Raiders and the Atlanta Falcons here tonight. All right, let's dive into these games for my plays here in this one. These ones, I should say. Let's start in Minnesota. Sam Darnold and the Minnesota Vikings clinched their ticket to the NFL playoffs yesterday with Green Bay's victory over Seattle, but Minnesota has a lot more to play for than just getting into the dance. If the Minnesota Vikings win out, which would be a game tonight where they're 6.5-point favorite, they play the Seahawks next week. We don't know if Geno Smith will be ready to go in that early numbers out there. No number here at the South Point. Chris is waiting to see the status of Geno Smith before putting a number out there. Is 4 with Minnesota. Quite frankly, 3 points might not be enough from Geno to howl after what we saw last night. And then they play the Packers and the Lions back-to-back. So 3 divisional games of the Final 4 here for the Vikings. But if they win them all, the NFC playoffs go through U.S. Bank Stadium, which I don't think anyone expected going into the year, obviously, with Minnesota projected by most to finish last in the NFC North, even behind these Chicago Bears, who have turned into the lowly Chicago Bears yet again. So Chris and company are at 6.5. There's a lot of 7 juice to the underdog in the market. Chris moved this number not too long ago, back from 7 to 6.5, and was at about 2 o'clock this afternoon. Total 43.5. I am very concerned about the Bears' offensive line in this game. No Braxton Jones, who's out with concussion symptoms that probably were suffered in the game last week against the 49ers. The Bears last week played one of the worst games I've ever seen in the first game with interim Thomas Brown, where they were only getting outgained 325-4 at halftime. That's outgained, 325-4. They end up losing the game 38-13. Didn't get much better. It's still 452-162 on the yardage. 3 yards a play to 7.5 against a Niner team that flipped around and scored 6 points and no touchdowns in their next game against a pretty average Ram defense. This is one of these games for me where I don't love laying Minnesota in this game. I would go under 43.5. I'd go under first half, 21.5. I'd go under first quarter, 7.5 would be the way that I would look at this in a traditional sense. Now, could Minnesota doom you here if this is a game where Minnesota wins 35-10? Yeah, that wouldn't shock me here. You can also go Bear team total under. There's a way that I like playing that, which we'll get to in a little bit, in the odds that are out there in the marketplace. But boy, I think Chicago's going to struggle to score while Minnesota's defense is at full throat here in this game here today. If we're looking at the anytime touchdown market, pretty barren here today for me. And I don't think it's the best of numbers. The best number I saw on a no touchdown is 185-1, which is clearly reduced because we just saw it cash on Thursday night with the Rams and the 49ers. If you can find 200-1, I'd sprinkle $5 on it. That would be it. 205, that's 1,000. No mathematician, but that's a pretty good day at the office if you have that. But if we're looking for individual ones, I want to go down the board on the Minnesota end. I would be looking at Jalen Naylor, the number 3 wide receiver at 5-1. All these odds via DraftKings, all subject to change, as you know. You look down the board, Jalen Naylor 5-1. You look down the board, Josh Oliver 5-1. There was also a Johnny Munt out there who is their third tight end at plus 650. I would look down the board with Minnesota, especially coming off a game where Jordan Addison at 3, Justin Jefferson at 2. Bears secondary, mixed bag, especially as you go down the board. I think you're looking at auxiliary options here today with Minnesota anytime touchdown markets. That would be the way I'd look to play this game if you're looking at this individual market. And Aaron Jones minus 125 is probably not bad either if you want to go that route. I have no faith in anyone in Chicago. I wouldn't even bother betting it if we're going that. If we're looking at props here tonight, I have a list. I know usually we go through all of them, but I'm not going to waste your time with stuff I know I'm not interested in betting here tonight. So we'll start off with Sammy D. Sam Darnold, I do like him to throw a pick tonight. Should have thrown at least 3 in the first matchup against Chicago. Again, his Bear defense is not a pushover. I know they were awful last week, but this is not a terrible defense. I just wonder if it's the same thing that happened with the Jets. You fired a defensive-minded coach, and it turns into a total calamity on that end, like has happened for New York. Since Saleh got fired and their defense has been as bad as anyone's. But even money on Darnold, you probably even find some plus 110 out there. Don't mind going with that if you want to go that route with Sam Darnold over a half of an interception. Caleb Williams under 34.5, longest completion here tonight on the yardage. I just don't see many big plays in this game for Chicago's offense. If you're going to win this, I think you need a busted screenplay that goes for a ton of yardage. That would be the only way I think this cashes. So we'll go under 34.5 on Caleb Williams' longest completion. Jalen Naylor over 12.5 receiving yards. Just think it's too low for the number 3 wide receiver for the Minnesota Vikings. Then I have a matchup prop that DK had available that I like. And I also would look at this. These are also available at BetMGM. Just numbers vary across the board. Keenan Allen getting 3.5 receiving yards against Jordan Addison. Addison's coming off the huge game. I really think this is going to be a lesser Jordan Addison game. And since Keenan Allen has become healthy, he's been their number 1 wide receiver with Chicago. And just the way it's worked out, him and Caleb Williams have gotten more comfortable with each other. So 3.5 plus 3.5 on Keenan Allen yardage against Jordan Addison. I think Minnesota's going to win this game. I think they're going to try to bleed the clock at the end of the game. Over 15.5 rushing attempts for Aaron Jones is even money. I would look to play that as well. Been a weird year, especially since Cam Akers has gotten to town. The usage for Aaron Jones has been a little bit funky, especially when Minnesota's led late. The last time Jones had more carries than that number out there was against the Bears. He had 22 carries in that game. So But before that, he had he had 5 against Arizona. He got hurt in that Arizona game. He had 13 against Atlanta. But October 24th against the Rams through the Bear game, so that 1 month, he only went under this total once. 19, 21, 17, 15, 22 were the numbers for Aaron Jones carries in that month stretch before these last 2 games where he's gone under that number. Jonathan Grenard over a quarter of a sack. You are having to lay a price on this. It's about $1.75. If you can find over a half a sack at a better price, I would go with this. He's their best pass rusher against, again, a Bears offensive line that's bad to begin with, without their best lineman in Braxton Jones. Expect this to be a big problem tonight for Caleb Williams and company. Here's one of my favorites ones that I saw on DK. The Bears to record the most punts in this game. You like that? Like that? Minus 150. Stunned this is not higher than that. Would have expected this to be over $2. Now, this was a 3-way market technically. If there were no punts or they tied, it would not go there. But I just don't see a world where Minnesota punts more than Chicago here tonight. So minus 150 on the Bears to record more punts in the game. And then the last fade of the Bears, under 1.5 total touchdowns. You're getting plus money like this a whole lot. I'm a little bit surprised that they didn't go 2.5 juiced heavily, but I like this on the Bears, under 1.5 total touchdowns here tonight. I just don't see them scoring much here against Minnesota. And again, remember that first matchup was one of the weirder games of the NFL season. Bears scored 11 points in under 20 seconds, lost in overtime 30-27, and a much higher scoring game than I think any of us anticipated in that one. All right, let's go to the second game on the board. Half hour later. So that first game starts at 8 o'clock Eastern. This game, the Atlanta Falcons and the Las Vegas Raiders, 6-point favorites. The Falcons are here at Allegiant Stadium here in town, just a little due north of us here at the South Point. This is a 5:30 local time, 8:30 Eastern kickoff for this one. I do not like either of these teams this year. I'm more than on record of saying how much I despise this Falcon team yet again. And the Raiders, I just don't think have the horses for me to feel good about betting this game. Now, we're a few moments away from seeing if Aiden O'Connell is going to play in this game or not. He did go through warm-ups here today. Adam Hill with the tweet. The expectation still is that Desmond Ridder will start. And Aiden O'Connell may be available as the number 2 quarterback here tonight for the Raiders, which, again, the Raiders are going nowhere here. If the Raiders lose out, the Raiders are at worst getting the number 2 pick. At worst. There are some weird things with tiebreakers and such. Right now, the Giants, well, actually, if the Raiders lose tonight, the Raiders would hop the Giants for the number 1 overall pick because they'd have a weaker strength of schedule after tonight than the New York Giants. So everything out in front of them for the Raiders to get Shedeur Sanders and the number 1 overall pick, or Travis Hunter, whichever way they want to go, for whichever Colorado star they want. With that said, I think you're insane if you lay this many points on the road with the Falcons. I think this is the most classic stay away that you could possibly get with these 2 teams here tonight, at least in a traditional sense. There are other ways to bet this game, but a traditional sense, I mean, if you want a money line Atlanta with Minnesota tonight, sure. I guess, be my guest, get about $1.25 on that. All right, sure. But I do not want to be laying 6 points with Atlanta on the road against anyone. No, thank you. No, thank you whatsoever. And I'm not strong enough on this awful Raider team to take 6. Just can't quite get there on that. Anytime touchdown market. Sitting at 100-1 on a no scorer either. Yeah, I wish we were getting a little more on that, guys. If we were getting 200-1, it'd be a no-brainer. Take $5 on it, see what happens. Brock Bowers is the bet if we're looking at anytime touchdown markets. Now, Bowers' price is worse for the better than it's been because he was sitting at plus 240 basically the whole year, and then he scored 2 straight weeks, and the books bopped it down, and correctly so, because he's their only real receiving threat. But this has come back enough. It was plus 140 last week. He didn't score. It's now back to plus 170. I think we've come back enough the other way that we can take Brock Bowers plus 170 anytime touchdown. We'll have more Bowers props in a little bit, but I would very much look to that on that front. If you want to take a piece of Desmond Ridder plus 425, I don't mind that. I wish the price was bigger, though, if we're going that. And then touchdown vulture himself, Tyler Algier, at 2-1. Don't mind that if you want to take that. 4 props that I'm looking at in this game tonight. They actually involve, 3 of them involve the 3 names I just named. The first one is Desmond Ridder throwing an interception tonight. If you see how your book scores this, because make sure it's a book where if Ridder doesn't get in the game, you're getting your money back. Most books that have any sort of integrity will let you will be avoided bet if the guy doesn't go in there. But again, check your books on that for the props. Over a half, minus 130 on Ridder for this one. I think it's a great bet. He's throwing 1. Even though the Falcons, again, they don't rush the quarterback very well. So that is something to at least keep in mind here. I think that's better than any sort of sack prop tonight. With that said, I think Desmond Ridder is going to throw the Brock Bowers. I think Bowers, if you had a book that does targets, I think Bowers is getting more than 10 targets tonight. So if you can find that, that would be great. I have over 62.5 receiving yards. You might even be able to find 61.5. I think this is a huge game for Bowers against a team that struggles to cover the tight end in the Atlanta Falcons. Tyler Algier over 26.5 rushing yards. This kind of feels like one of those weird games where we see too much of Algier and not enough of Bijan Robinson. So over 26.5 on Algier on that one. And then the last one on the board, the Raiders under 2.5 touchdowns. I didn't see a 1.5. It's a lot of juice in minus 210. If the Raiders scored 3 touchdowns, you tip your hat and just move to your next bet at this point. I don't ever really advocate for laying this significant of a price, but I thought this was if this was minus 260, I also think this was a fair price on the Raiders. I just don't see them scoring touchdowns tonight. I think this is a lot of. You could also go over 1.5 field goals on Carlson if you wanted to. I think this could be one of those settling games from Antonio Pierce, where he's just settling for 3 more than he should across the board. All right, let's take a break. When we get back, more thoughts on this game with our friend Vinny Magliulo. Joins us next. We'll also, because there's college bowl games the next few days, we'll see how the action's been on the Frisco Bowl and the LA Bowl and a fun non-power conference battle between James Madison and Western Kentucky. When we get back, Sports by the Book Football Frenzy.
South Point is also proud to provide a variety of relaxing amenities for the guests who want to be pampered. Soak up the sun and let your stress melt away in our lagoon-style paradise swimming pool. A relaxing getaway where you can bask in the desert sun and enjoy seasonal food and bar service poolside. And if you really want to escape, come to Spa Costa del Sur. From couple suites to a co-ed wet area, our spa caters to business and leisure travelers who want to unwind and elevate their senses. A visit to one of our spa's steam, sauna, or whirlpool treatment rooms will leave any guest feeling like they can take on the world. Our gaming amenities include over 60 table games and over 2,600 of the most popular slot and video poker machines. We have penny slots, including the popular Buffalo games, and real machines like Wheel of Fortune, Triple Sevens, and Megabucks. If you prefer video poker, try Deuces Wild, Double Double Bonus, or a variety of multi-denomination games. Or try your hand at one of the most popular casino table games in the world, Blackjack. Don't let the game intimidate you. Blackjack, also known as 21, is both easy and fun. And our dealers are always happy to assist. And the best part? Blackjack always pays 3 to 2. Next, check out the roulette tables. Roulette is one of the easiest casino games to learn, and so much fun to play. It's a favorite of both beginners and seasoned players. In addition to blackjack and roulette, our casino pit features over 60 popular table games like Baccarat, Pai-Gow Poker, 3-Card Poker, Ultimate Texas Hold'em, and Mississippi Stud. So get out of your room and come join in the fun.
We're back. Happy to be with you as always, Jeff Parles. Vinny Magliulo is here.
What do you say, Jeffrey?
It's good to see you. It's always good to see you.
Well, thank you. It's a little light, and we got Ann and Drew in here today with us.
It's quiet. It's a very calm day.
Well, it's a little,
little less noise in here today.
It was quite.
It's quite the showing over the last 2 weeks.
That's right. Yeah.
To say the very least. Which look, I know if you'll wander in here 1 week from Wednesday. Once everyone's had enough of their relatives on Christmas Day, they'll be at the tables on Christmas.
We'll have more relatives than anybody in the country. Trust me. It always works out that way.
So Vinny, I want to start real quick.
Mm-hmm.
We'll get the final recap of these NFL games at the end, but college bowl season, which did start on Saturday, which of course started in honestly hilarious fashion for me, because. Because, well, yes, I know what your reaction is going to be right away. But it was the classic thing. South Alabama's 3 best offensive players get ruled out an hour and a half before the game starts. And the line tumbles, and the game went 7. Yeah. So just right out of the gate, you get a ridiculous middle scenario where, again, I'm just throwing this out there. If you ended up on South Alabama -7 or 7.5 because, or excuse me, 7.5 or 8 is the better way to do it because, Gio Lopez is supposed to play and then Gio Lopez gets ruled out. Like, what are you supposed to do? This is what college bowl season is all across the board at this point.
It's very disappointing and very difficult. It's frustrating for you and anybody that's betting these games. It's frustrating to book these games. I mean, honestly, and that's why. And we talked about it with Chris on Friday. You've got a situation where you can't even come close to having the same limits as you do on the playoff games.
Of course,
I mean it's just there's no comparison. So you just don't know who's, and it's not injury. It's not just injuries. I mean the biggest factor is who's opting out. Frankly, right? I mean. That's just it. Look at Marshall. Look at the Marshall situation.
Well, the Marshall situation. Right? So
team's not even going to the bowl game. 25 guys automatically transferred. That's just the first batch that's transferred.
So just so people are, if they're not aware of what Vinny is talking about here, this is the Independence Bowl, which was supposed to be American Athletic Champion Army against Sun Belt Champion Marshall, which would look like it was going to be a hell of a game, honestly.
Yeah, actually.
Yeah. Marshall's program's totally in disarray because they didn't offer their head coach Huff an extension. He leaves immediately to take the Southern Miss job right after they win the conference championship. And then 25 people are in the portal.
Correct.
They don't have enough scholarship guys to play the game.
Right.
They have to opt out. So Army instead gets to play Louisiana Tech, who's by any stretch not a good football team. So great on that. But Vinny, just for this week, like, in theory, actually, the next 2 days, in theory, should be good. Even with the issues. Again, West Virginia is taking on Memphis. Memphis, as of this moment, everyone's playing, by the way.
As of this moment, and the game is at 4.5, it's only moved 2.5 points back up as high as 5.5, and now back down to 4.5.
And West Virginia, I will say this. They hired Rich Rodriguez back for his second tenure as West Virginia coach. Was at Jacksonville State these past few years, won the CUSA title this year, and quite frankly, probably should have never left Morgantown to begin with, but that's a different discussion for a different time. But I actually think West Virginia probably gets helped here because I think more people are going to stick around because they want to play for Rich Rod, especially on that offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, I don't think we'll have a situation like the Marshall situation you just spoke about, Jeff, but still much quicker movement as well with these games. So with the lower limits, it will still take the fair bet. I mean, it's not like we're taking nickels or dimes. I mean, so. The thing about it is that there's going to be more movement and quicker movement, and in some cases, bigger incremental movement. So you look at the next game, James Madison on Wednesday. Here's a game that opened 7, got as high as 9.5. I think I saw somebody might have been even tipped 10 over the weekend. This game is now back to the opening number, right?
Yep.
And I think a lot of times, too, there's speculation, right? So social media gets monitored quite a bit to get a feel for what's happening with these games. We see that a lot, right, with the draft props that are involved with the NBA, especially the NFL draft. So all you could do is try to anticipate in some cases, and but protect yourself as a bettor. Bettors should be. And I wouldn't recommend betting these games like you would bet the playoff games. But
no way.
Unless you
No
really
way.
believe that you've got enough conviction and information to say, you know what, I'm going to, I believe this is what's happening, and for these reasons, I'm going to. But it's tread with a great deal of caution.
Unless if you are like in the know almost, like. Hey, these guys are going to like. It's very hard. You and I talked about this last week.
Yeah.
These non-college football playoff games are going to be bet in-game only, with the exception of one game potentially, and that's if Colorado plays their stars against BYU.
That's correct.
That is the only game
Right.
on the board that I would be looking to play at this point,
Right.
assuming Dion is being truthful that Shador and Travis Hunter will play in the Alamo Bowl. If that is the case, then I can treat that game pretty normally, because I
Right.
know BYU, it's been pretty clear out of BYU's camp that they're playing that as straight up as they possibly can.
And BYU as a program typically will do that, right? That's their mantra. But look, we're talking about 35, 40 bowl games, or 35 of these games where you just honestly, there's just not, you just don't know. And I'm all for it. Listen, I want everybody to know the same thing. I want bettors and bookmakers to know who's playing, because that's good for business. So, but needless to say, they're up, and they're moving quick. Look, UNLV's playing.
Yeah,
against Cal.
Let's go to that one real quick.
Yeah, this one opened with Cal as 4.5-point favorites. I think a lot had to do with Coach Odom leaving and things, but looks like everybody's sick. Hey, by the way, the Rebels got a pretty good hire in Dan Mullen. Okay,
Vinny.
Nothing wrong with that hire.
Vinny, if you told me that Barry Odom would leave,
Right.
and then they got a guy who got Mississippi State to #1 in the country.
Coach Dak Prescott, when he was, that's who his quarterback was at Mississippi State.
Hey, Vinny, that's the best trivia question there ever was. Who was the initial #1 team in the first ever college football playoff rankings?
Yeah.
It was Mississippi State.
Yeah.
As
So
we
Dan
all
Mullen,
expected.
he comes from the studio now and gets back out there. It's in his blood in coaching. So, wish Barry Odom well. But getting Dan Mullen in, I think, is certainly speaking to the growth too of the UNLV football program.
It's a great thing to say for UNLV that the Barry Odom era will not be the exception to the rule for modern day UNLV football.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest thing that happened, because look, they could have gone out and they could have made a hire that was not that great, and I don't think UNLV will ever fall back into potentially one of the worst programs in the country territory, but they could have fallen back to mid-range Mountain West team very easily with the wrong hire.
And I think that what Dan Mullen saw was, listen, Barry Odom did a good job there. It's a lot. Listen, it's totally different now with the facility, and the facility being Allegiant Stadium, not the Silver Bowl out in the middle of nowhere. It was unbelievable when recruits would come in. They'd be flying into town. They'd look down, look out, and you're flying either over or near the Las Vegas Strip, and then you go out to the facility out in the middle of nowhere, 30 miles outside of town, and that's the stadium. No, it's not going to happen. Now they're playing where the Raiders are playing their games, and it's a much better situation. So that helped it. We'll see how things shake out in the next couple of years with the conference, right? And with a good continued conference realignment, because the Pac-12 is going to come back in 26. And as of now, UNLV is not a part of that move, but we'll see how things continue to evolve, right?
Well, I will tell you again. Pac-12 still needs one team to be a legal conference. They still need one more.
They only have 7.
They only have 7 right now. Mountain West has hit that plateau that they need already, and they will be over the top if Northern Illinois decides to go. potential Pac-12 team, current FCS team, Sacramento State, was in the news today because apparently they're interviewing Michael Vick for their head coaching job, as we all expected. So, yeah, to say the very least there. All right, Vinny, I just want to ask you a few things before we get out of here today. We already discussed what this bowl season is going to be, but let's get to the nitty gritty here. Let's go to these big games.
Yeah.
For 4 days away. Well, again, Vinny, Chris, Jimmy, and somehow me, with all the experience and all the Hall of Famers on the desk, we'll all be here on Friday, 2 hours again, 2 to 4, to get you ready for the college football playoff round 1, plus the whole week in the NFL where, boy, I was looking at the NFL schedule coming up this week before the show, and I brought it up to Ann. The best games of the NFL weekend are against the college football playoff games on Saturday, as ridiculous as that is.
You've got the Texans and the Chiefs, and, of course, the whole Patrick Mahomes situation is looming. And the Steelers-Ravens on Saturday as well, and we don't know about Watt's status for the Steelers. So he did not come back into the game yesterday. So we'll see how those injuries play out.
And not only that, if I think a lot of people are missing this, and I missed this too earlier in my prep. If the Pittsburgh Steelers go to Baltimore and win, they clinch. They'll
clinch the division.
They will have clinched the AFC North if they sweep Baltimore, because they would have a 2-game lead with 2 to go.
With the tiebreaker.
It would be all over. If Pittsburgh won that, if Baltimore won, then it would come down to the final 2 weeks.
Right.
With Pittsburgh having a pretty, again, we talked about this, Pittsburgh's close is rough, starting last week with Philadelphia. Then they go at Baltimore, Kansas City at home, Cincinnati to end the year, which Cincinnati's the only under 500 team they see the last 4 weeks.
Well, still a team that can score, a team also with looks like some strife, right, internal, particularly with Joe Burrow now, so we'll have to see how that plays out. But that's why, in look-ahead lines, there's going to be drastic changes with some of these teams and some of these numbers for weeks 17 and 18.
So, Vinny, these college football games, Chris said it earlier, Notre Dame, they're betting Indiana 9-7 now on this game.
Took a pretty good-sized bet on Indiana today.
That's what Chris said.
Yeah,
Took a
right
pretty nice-sized bet on the Hoosiers.
Yeah, down to 7. They took the 7.5, and with the Hoosiers, that game now at 51. And it really hasn't moved that much. Just it dipped down first, but now more money on the over, and I suspect that'll continue unless there's some kind of real bad weather change. But yeah, good game. Got lots of interest on it. A lot of interest in Notre Dame in the futures to win it all. When you look at it's so 25-1 a year ago. 12-1 going into when we posted the playoff games, and now down to 7. So there's been quite a bit of interest on the Irish to win the title. But this game, and I've said it all along, that these games will be bet and they will be booked like NFL playoff games.
And
they'll get they'll get that kind of respect from both sides of the counter. And then you mentioned there's 3 on Saturday. Saturday, what a great day Saturday is.
Look, Saturday is, what Saturday's like? And everyone was whining like crazy when the NFL said they were going to go against the college football playoff. I think it's great. I get to use my split screen. I'm in great shape.
Well, yeah, of course.
I get to use my split screen. I'm going to have Kansas City and Houston on one end, and I'm going to have Penn State and SMU on the other end.
And there's everything is spaced beautifully.
They're all staggered nicely, yeah.
And by the way, the primetime game is the Tennessee-Ohio State game, because the Texans and Chiefs will play at 10 a.m. our local time, and then 1:30 for the Steelers and Ravens. Yeah. Those are Pacific times. But SMU and Penn State, that game from 8 to 8.5. Penn State favored.
Penn State, by the way, real quick, on just another transfer portal shocker. So actually, there's twofold for Penn State. Reports this morning that Drew Aller is going to come back for 2025, which caught me off guard, because I think Aller, with the right lead up to the draft, would actually be a first-round pick in this year's draft. Now I think Aller, NIL is probably crazy for him next year. He may make a couple $1 million living in State College.
He has a ridiculous playoff run and
decides to go at that point.
Why not, right?
Very well could be the case. But if he's back next year, it changes it. So Penn State's backup, Bull Perbula, who we remember saved their bacon against Wisconsin earlier this year, is entering the portal and not with the team for the playoff. So
no backup.
If Aller gets hurt, this is a very different looking Penn State operation where we've already seen Perbula prove that he's capable of running the offense with ease and was actually quite effective against Wisconsin. So that's something to keep in mind if you're betting this in game. If somehow again, good point. We don't want any injuries, but if something happened to Aller in this game, Penn State's on the third quarterback. They're not on a normal backup.
Against a very pacey team in SMU. So Clemson and Texas, Jeff, holding steady, both 11 for the number and 51.5 for the total.
It's so funny. All these games have had a bunch of movement, and then that one, you put the number up on Sunday the 8th, and it hasn't moved, which means, is that you get to do the point here? Does that mean that we have two-way action?
You could say two-way action, which Ann loves, and it's a tribute to Ann anytime we get it. But also, it's the least bet game so far.
I'm not surprised
I
by
will
that.
tell you that as we get closer, come Friday and Saturday, there'll be plenty of business on this game because people will tie it in, and it's solo, right? I mean, although it's going to start a half hour before the Steelers-Ravens, so there'll be a lot of tie-in too. Lots of cross category parlays with both these games and the NFL games. And then Tennessee and Ohio State at 5 o'clock on Saturday. Jeff, 7, got as high as 8, now back to now down right in the middle to 7.5. And the total on this one, just a little dip to the under at 47 by half a point. So good games, good action so far. There'll be first halves, certainly the halftimes, the in-game you mentioned. I think the in-game will be very popular, and they'll be tied heavily not only into the games on Saturday, same day, but everything going into Sunday. You know, we talk about the Thursday night game kind of lighting the fuse, and Thursday night you have the Broncos-Chargers, but it'll be like Thanksgiving because you have the Thursday action going to Friday and into Saturday and Sunday.
It's going to be amazing.
Yeah.
And I genuinely can't wait to see how this all plays out. And like I told Chris earlier in the show, I really do think that last game, that Saturday night game, which is all on its own, not against the NFL, just Ohio State and Tennessee.
Yep.
The winner, that result is really going to dictate how this playoff goes for me. Because if Tennessee shocks Ohio State, I think Oregon's path gets a lot easier than it would be if they have to go Ohio State, Texas, whoever comes out of the bottom. Because that is as brutal of a 3-game stretch as you could possibly drawn up if that's what the Ducks have to go through.
Well, it's also a situation is who's going to handle the pressure, the limelight. You want to check injuries, of course, and who's to help. Listen, it's not always it's who's playing the best ball now too. I mean, you could look at this NFL, what's going on. Look at the Lions situation, and we'll talk more about that on Friday. Their injury situation is significantly impactful.
Be a heck of a weekend.
Yeah.
To say the very least. Vinny, Chris, Jimmy, and I back on Friday. On this desk, 2 to 4, to preview everything. Always be on the lookout at an amazing show as it is every Friday. But we, again, two more 2-hour shows left before the NFL winds down and we get into the final week of the NFL season. As crazy as that is, only 3 weeks away. Only 3 weeks to go in the NFL. Just say, Vinny, sometimes with a bet, don't blink.
Don't blink.
Don't blink.
The season.
With football season.
Come and gone.
At this point. All right, that's all the time we got here today. Real quick. Actually, we do not have an injury report yet. I was going to say if Aiden O'Connell got officially ruled out, then we could have some fun here today, but nothing.
Listen, no
nothing
secret.
official yet.
We're going to need at least one of these dogs tonight. 6.5 now on the Vikings. Got as high as 7, and 6 on the Falcons. Continue to see favorite money.
My
particularly
brain.
at Allegiant.
By the way, O'Connell, well, you know what? I'm happy the show went a minute late because the Raiders legitimately just released their injuries.
Okay.
O'Connell's the third quarterback.
The third.
Desmond Ridder, hello, you're starting for sure now in this game as we
Correct.
expected through the week. I would imagine that the market is kind of already, the way that this has been bet, the market was assuming Ridder anyway.
Correct.
So if anything, maybe a half point for people just continuing to bet it up, but not going to go much more than that 6 that it closed out. Or it's currently at right now. Vinny, thank you.
Good to be with you.
Drew Dog, and thank you. Thank you to everyone for watching here today. I'm Jeff Parles. Tomorrow on this channel, Alex White and Kenny White will be here at 9 a.m. They'll get you ready for the day in sports right here at the South Point studio. Sports by the Book Football Frenzy. We'll see you again on the Football Frenzy program on Thursday, previewing the Chargers and the Broncos. Good luck, everyone. Have a good night betting these games.